Hello, today I'll be talking about my 15 Desert Island albums. Now keep in mind this is a list that really could change at any time. There might be some days where some of these albums might be swapped with some other albums that didn't make it, depending on how I'm feeling or the day or anything like that. But yeah, also when I was thinking about my 15, I tried to have some variations so I don't make this list boring, predictable, or anything like that. But let's go ahead and get into this. This will be in no particular order. But yeah, we're going to start off with Led Zeppelin's debut album. So yeah, this is my favorite Led Zeppelin album. I know some people might point to Led Zeppelin 4 or Physical Graffiti or some of those albums, but for me, I have to go with the debut. This is the one that I probably go back to the most, and this album for me kind of honestly has no skips. I think this is a pretty damn good debut album, maybe one of the greatest debut rock albums of all time, I'd say. Pretty good stuff. Definitely had to make my list, I'd say. But let's go ahead and move on to something on the more rap side of things, and that is Good Kid, Mad City by Kendrick Lamar. Now, I knew Kendrick would have to make my 15, but picking an album from his discography was the tough part, because for me, it was either going to be this album or To Pimp a Butterfly. Damn is also pretty good too, but I ultimately decided on this album, and honestly, again, there might be days where I might put To Pimp a Butterfly over this one, but for now, I'll just go with Good Kid, Mad City. And yeah, I became a fan of this guy like a month or two, maybe 3 months after this album came out. I remember hearing some of the songs on this album on the radio, instantly hooked me, and been a fan of Kendrick Lamar ever since. And he still continues to put out great albums. To me, he has not missed yet. But yeah, honestly, a really great album. If you're not a big fan of modern rap and you're looking for something a bit more modern that doesn't sound like your typical rap that you would hear maybe on the radio, or something that's not mumble rap. If you're looking for something actually pretty good that's in the realm of modern rap, definitely check this out. Pretty good stuff. Along with, of course, To Pimp a Butterfly and Damn. Those albums are also really good. And honestly, his latest album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, I think is also pretty good too. For me, not as good as Damn or To Pimp a Butterfly or Good Kid, Mad City, but still, overall, fairly solid album. But let's go ahead and move on to the next one here, and that is, as I've mentioned before multiple times on my channel, one of my favorite albums of all time, and that is Meteora by Linkin Park. So yeah, I love it enough to have 3 different versions of the album. And when it comes to the lost demos from this anniversary edition, Healing Foot has to be probably my favorite. I absolutely love that song. Massive is also pretty good too. I do like the instrumental West Side, but yeah, Meteora, this album to me has no skips. There is enough variation, enough difference going on where things don't blend together. And when it comes to the world of nu metal, this is definitely one of the greatest albums from that era, in my opinion. And for me, this album is Linkin Park's peak, and it's an album that just never gets old for me. I mean, I think it was one of the first albums that I ever heard in full, and I still love it all these years later. But let's go ahead and move on to something a bit different. Faith No More with their album Angel Dust. So yeah, The Real Thing is also really good. I know some people point to that album as their favorite, but I know also many other fans would point to this album as their favorite, and I'm one of those fans. Absolutely love this album. There might be 1 or 2 songs that are maybe skippable, but at the same time, this is an album that you can listen to from front to back, at least for me personally. Definitely one of the greatest rock albums to come from the 90s, in my opinion. Really great album, and I think the follow-up to this album, King for a Day, Fool for a Lifetime, is also really good too. But yeah, absolutely love this one. Some of my favorites on here: Land of Sunshine, Everything's Ruined, Kindergarten, A Small Victory, Crack Hitler, I think is maybe one of the band's most underrated songs. I really like that song. But yeah, all around, really great album. If you like 90s rock and somehow haven't heard this album, definitely give it a listen. Pretty good stuff. And back to rap, I'll be going to The Eminem Show by, of course, Eminem. So for me, I think this is his best. I know some people would maybe point to the Marshall Mathers LP. That would be second for me, but this one has to be at the top for me. Now, when it comes to Eminem, my gateway into his music was Recovery. That was the latest album at the time when I was getting into his music, and I do still have a soft spot for Recovery. And I could have picked that album over this one, but I have to go with this one because, again, for me, definitely his best. A lot of really great songs on here like Business, Square Dance, Soldier, Without Me, Till I Collapse, and of course many others. But yeah, all around, really great album. And now we're moving into some thrash, and I couldn't talk about Desert Island without mentioning an album from the Big Four. And for this case here, we'll be talking about Metallica with Ride the Lightning. Absolutely love this album. Now, when it comes to thrash, I mean, this album and Rust in Peace are probably the top for me when it comes to thrash. Of course, there are many albums they could also mention too, but Rust in Peace and Ride the Lightning are definitely the top for me when it comes to thrash. And my mind on that could change at any time. There are other many great albums too, like of course Coma of Souls by Creator. But yeah, for this video, had to go with Ride the Lightning. For me, it is my favorite from Metallica. This album for me has no skips, yes, including Escape. I know some people trash on that song, including the band, but I like that song. And yes, it is the weakest song on the album, but I don't think it's straight up bad by any means. I still think it's overall a solid song, but so many great songs in here, so many classics from this band on this album, like Fight Fire with Fire, and For Whom the Bell Tolls, and Fade to Black, Trapped Under Ice. But yeah, all around, really great album, definitely a classic, a metal classic. Speaking of metal classics, my next album is Seventh Son of a Seventh Son by Iron Maiden. I mean, when it comes to favorite Iron Maiden albums, you definitely get multiple answers, different answers. Some people might point to Peace of Mind or Number of the Beast, maybe in Power Slave. Power Slave would be my second favorite though, but this one's my favorite. I understand the whole synthesizer thing not being for every fan, not being for everyone, but I don't know. I personally really dig this album. I mean, you really can't go wrong with any of the songs on here. Sure, like with any album, there are some songs in here that are better than some others and all that good stuff, but some of my favorites on here, Moonchild, of course, Can I Play With Madness, The Clairvoyant, which is maybe a top 5 Iron Maiden song for me. I absolutely love that song. But yeah, all around, really great album from Iron Maiden. Definitely at the top for me when it comes to their discography. Now we'll be moving into some electronic music with the Prodigy, Fat of the Land. Again, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I did want to have some variation with my 15 here. And yeah, this album's awesome. As time has gone on, it's grown to be honestly one of my favorite albums of all time. I mean, this album for me really has no skips. I mean, Climatize, if I pronounced that correctly, maybe the weakest song on the album for me, but still, all around, fairly solid song. But you have other great songs. Firestarter, of course, which is one of their big songs. Smack My Bitch Up, Serial Thriller, Minefields. A lot of great songs on this album, and really good stuff. And now we're moving to an album that I listened to a lot when I was a kid, and that is Follow the Leader by Korn. And you know what? I could have gone with their debut album. And you know what? There might be days where that album would take this album's place in my 15. But I decided to go with this album. Honestly, it's tough for me to pick a favorite Korn album. There might be days where I might pick this one or Issues or the debut. But for this video, again, decided to go with this one. I mean, a lot of great songs in here. It's On, Freak on a Leash, which is of course one of their big songs. Same with Got the Life. Dead Bodies Everywhere, I really like that song. Always been one of my personal favorites on the album. Fairly dark song. My Gift to You, in my opinion, is one of their best album closers. And when it comes to the songs that have the futures, I do like Children of the Corn featuring Ice Cube. I mean, I'm not an Ice Cube fan. I mean, I don't dislike his music or anything, but I don't know. Maybe I haven't dug too deep into his stuff. But either way, Children of the Corn, I do really like that song. But yeah, all around, probably one of the best albums to come from that whole nu metal movement. And now I'll be moving to some gothic metal with Lacuna Coil with Karma Code. Again, with the whole variety thing that I was trying to do with my 15, I decided to have at least 1 or 2 albums in here that has female vocals, and in this case, this album is one of those. And yeah, for me, this is the band's best. I know some people might point to Comalies or Comalies. I've heard different pronunciations, but either way, that album would probably be my second favorite. But yeah, this one has to be at the top for me with Lacuna Coil. Absolutely love this album. And if you like 2000s rock, or if you like the more gothic side of rock or metal, definitely give this album a listen. But yeah, some of my favorites on here: Our Truth, of course, which was the first song I ever heard from the band. Within Me, definitely one of their best ballads or more melodic songs. What I See is really good. The Game, to me, is one of their most underrated songs by far. And I might say the same thing for Without Fear, which, if I remember correctly, the lyrics are in Italian. You do, of course, have the cover of Enjoy the Silence, which is the album closer. I do like that song. I don't know if it's one of my favorites, but either way, I do like that cover. Closer is also really good. Another one of the bigger songs on the album. But yeah, again, really dig this album. And if you haven't heard it and you like 2000s rock, 2000s metal, definitely check it out. But now I'll be moving to a prog rock classic, and definitely one of my favorite albums of all time. Might be one of my top 10 favorite albums of all time, to be honest. Absolutely love this album, and the album I am talking about is Moving Pictures by Rush. I love it enough to have 3 different versions of the album. And yeah, this album, for me, definitely no skips. You have one of their best instrumentals on here, YYZ. Of course, you have classics like Tom Sawyer and Limelight, which definitely got the band some pretty solid commercial success, especially with Tom Sawyer. But you have the epic on here, The Camera Eye, which I think is also really good. Witch Hunt, maybe the most underrated song on here. I do dig that song. Red Barchetta is also really good. And then you have the album closer, Vital Signs. Not my favorite on here, but I do like that song though. Overall, a solid album closer. But yeah, you really can't go wrong with any of the songs on here. And if you like classic rock, prog rock, definitely check this album out if you haven't heard it. Definitely, honestly, a must-have when it comes to if you like rock and you collect CDs or vinyl or anything like that. Absolutely love that album. Next, we're moving to Aerosmith with Rocks. I had to include Aerosmith on this video, in this list somehow, because Aerosmith was one of the first classic rock bands that I ever got into, and I decided to go with this album because this one's probably my favorite from the band. Of course, I do also really like Permanent Vacation, Pump, Done with Mirrors, Toys in the Attic, just to name some other albums, but this one is the one that I probably had to go to. A lot of great songs: Back in the Saddle, Last Child, Sick as a Dog, Get the Let Out, which I think is one of their more overlooked songs. But yeah, overall, really great album. Probably one of my, honestly, I'd maybe say one of the greatest rock albums to come from the 70s. But yeah, pretty good stuff. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to grunge with Soundgarden, Bad Motor Finger. And yeah, when it comes to the world of grunge, this one's probably my favorite album. And yes, you do have Dirt by Alice in Chains, Facelift, 10 by Pearl Jam, Nevermind, of course. But for me, again, when it comes to grunge, this is definitely my favorite album from that era, from that time in music. But yeah, and of course, Chris Cornell, rest in peace. His vocals on here are just amazing, especially in songs like Outshined and Slaves and Bulldozers. Same with Room 1,000 Years Wide, definitely one of my favorite songs from the band. Yeah, definitely has to be at the top for me when it comes to the discography also. But yeah, all around, really great album. Next, we're moving to trip hop, a bit on the more electronic side, you can maybe say. And that is Dummy by Portishead. Honestly, this album or the self-titled could have made this list, but I decided to go with this one. But again, there might be days where I might go with the self-titled, but as of now, I'll probably go with Dummy. A bit on the more softer side, not as energetic as other albums on the list, you could say, but I don't know. Bit of a more vibey album, a bit darker, you could maybe say, but I don't know. When I'm in the mood for it, it definitely hits all the right spots. Definitely a really great album. I mean, Some of my favorites on here: Sour Times, Wandering Star, It's a Fire, which I think is one of the more overlooked songs on the album. Then you have this track number 7, Numb, which has to be probably a top 5 Portishead song for me. I absolutely love that album, or love that song, sorry. Especially the instrumental. Glory Box, which is, of course, one of the big songs on here. Definitely another highlight on the album. Roads is also really good. If you haven't heard this album, definitely give it a listen. I'd definitely be curious to see or hear how other people feel about the album if they've heard it. But yeah, really great album. And now the final album for this video is Californication by Red Hot Chili Peppers. I mean, for the amount of tracks that are on this album, there isn't a whole lot here in terms of filler, in my opinion. There may be 1 or 2 songs, but that's really it, though. I mean, again, for the amount of tracks that it has, I think this is an album that you can listen to from front to back. All around, a really awesome album. Definitely my favorite from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. So many great songs like Around the World, sorry, and Get On Top, the title track, Emmett Remus. This Velvet Glove, for me, one of the most underrated songs from Red Hot Chili Peppers. Absolutely love that song. I mean, when it comes to their more melodic songs or more softer songs, that one's definitely probably one of my favorites from them. Purple Stain, which is on the more funky side, I really like that one too. But yeah, all around, really awesome album. But yeah, those are my 15 Desert Island albums. Again, this is a list that can change at any time. Some albums that could maybe get swapped with some other albums that were left off. But anyways, that's my list. Let me know your Desert Island albums, whether it be top 5, 10, 20, or anything like that, all that good stuff. But anyways, thanks for watching. Please leave a comment and like, subscribe. Have a nice day, and take care.